Today, John Doyle finished his term as South Australia's Chief Justice. When he started out 17 years ago, mobile phones were just hitting their straps and Twitter was something that birds did. How technology will change the law is one of the things John Doyle spoke about when we caught up earlier this week. Chief Justice, welcome to 7:30 South Australia.
Thank you, Simon.
What have the highlights been?
Well, I think probably each transition in a way has been a highlight. When I went to the bar, that was at that time a highlight, going from being a solicitor to a barrister, then being barrister to being Solicitor General, and then Solicitor General to Chief Justice. I think each of those changes was a highlight. And I'm looking, I think, at retirement in the same way. It's a change to something different. I don't know just what it will be, but so in other words, this is the moment of another highlight.
Do you ever feel that you got a case wrong, or has there ever been a case that's haunted you?
No case that's haunted me. There have been 2 or 3 that I've got wrong because the High Court told me I'd got them wrong in their judgment.
Did you agree or not?
I did, actually. I mean, attitudes to appeals probably differ from person to person, but I remember a judge saying to me once, and it stuck with me, that he was always relieved that there was an appeal court there so that if he made a mistake, there's a chance it would be corrected, and he wouldn't wake up in the middle of the night suddenly thinking I did make a mistake and there's no chance of it being corrected. So I always felt the same way about appeals, and as I said, 2 or 3 times the High Court said I had got it wrong, and I think on each occasion when I read their reasons I thought, yes, I did get it wrong.
Do you think politicians now tend to be one-tune wonders when it comes to the law? That when you started out they were talking about a whole range of things. Now the emphasis, and maybe it's to do with the media as well, it's on the one thing, punishment.
I think when you speak to politicians, most of them, with all respect to them, do understand most of the subtleties of the issues, but I think when things, as inevitably they have to be, get simplified and distilled down at election time, then it tends to emerge as an appeal to a fairly simplistic, punitive way of thought.
You strike me as one of these people who doesn't seem to believe in a golden age.
No, well, I've said that a number of times. It's very tempting, I think, especially for people of my age, to look back and say our era, which they define for themselves, was a golden age when most things were a lot better, and it's gone downhill since then. If you've ever studied the classics, you'd know that you found in ancient Rome and ancient Greece various people in those days saying it's all been downhill since I was a lad. So this isn't a modern phenomenon, it's just, I think, a phenomenon of people. But yeah, I keep saying that I don't myself believe there was a golden age, that in many respects, in terms of the legal profession and the courts, now is better than it was then.
You've spoken before about things like Twitter and what impact that might have from a courtroom on, say,
yes,
a suppression order. Are you worried about technology?
Not worried. The point about Twitter and other forms of social media is that they can completely outflank suppression orders, and my point has been that we've got to face up to that. There's no point just carrying on with suppression orders as if society wasn't changing around us. Generally, I think technology will be a force, or can be a force for good. The point I've been making fairly regularly is technology tends to change the way we do things without us even realising it at times, and in the courts in particular we have to be careful not to blindly adopt technology. We have to always bear in mind what impact will this change have on the administration of justice. And so, as I've said, in many ways what you might call the virtual courtroom, where the judge is I could be in my room looking on a screen, the lawyers are in their rooms looking on a screen, the witness is somewhere else. These things are possible, but it doesn't necessarily mean that because that seems efficient and a modern way of doing it, that it's the best way of getting at the truth.
So what next for you then?
I don't know, actually. Wait and see. I'm certainly not planning a second career, which doesn't mean that I'm going to just sit at the beach. I want to keep my mind active, but I certainly don't want to just transition into another demanding position.
Trips away, anything like that?
Not just
staying out
yet.
of the path of scooters.
Well, since I broke my leg in France, my wife says she doesn't want to go anywhere with me. So until
does that mean that she's planning on going somewhere without you?
Well, that hadn't occurred to me actually, but she did get a new passport recently, so perhaps I better look into it.
What would you like to do? Is there...
Well, I'm very interested in the relationship between courts and the community. I'd like to still perhaps contribute in some way to the building of that relationship, or perhaps build is the wrong word, maintaining it. I'd probably be interested in helping with advocacy training. I think that's very important. I'm very interested in professional development for judges, that is, same as professional development for any professional. I think it's very important that by and large that be done by judges who are active still in judging. But I think at least for a few years post-retirement I can make a contribution there. I expect to spend a lot more time with grandchildren, that sort of thing, and with family.
Cheap babysitter.
Well, assistant babysitter I think might be a better way of putting it, Simon. That's how I'd prefer to keep it rather than chief babysitter.
Oh no, I said cheap.
Oh, cheap, yes, well it will be cheap. So yeah, there are a lot of things I want to do and I'll just wait and see how it pans out.
I don't mean this to sound like we're doing your obituary at this point in time, but how do you want to be remembered?
That might depend a little bit on when I die, I suppose, and what I've done meantime, but as a judge I'd just like to be remembered really as a judge. Well, I suppose the key things: efficient, fair, reliable, accurate, predictable, because I think you do need to be reasonably predictable.
Well, Chief Justice, it has been a pleasure to have you with us. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.